All right. Yo, what's happening now, my peoples? This is Big E, here today, live and direct on the quarantine edition of the Workers' Voice. Today we got Naughty by Nature Nat in the building, as well as nothing but a G thing, Greg.
All right.
And we later gonna be joined by a couple of workers in the hospitality industry that's gonna be giving us some updates as to this upcoming action on May Day next Friday. But anyway, like I was saying, I want to welcome everybody to Workers' Voice Radio, a weekly show produced by the New Orleans Workers Group, which is dedicated to serving the interests of the working class people of New Orleans. We recognize and respect the people that's living check to check, that's waiting all day for the bus. My people that's forced to look for somebody to watch their child as they go to their overworked and underpaid jobs. We're here to uplift the people getting low wages, such as the sanitation workers, the school cafeteria workers, the day laborers, the bus drivers, the store clerks, the educators, community leaders, etc. The working class pulls in over $8 billion annually for the city. But who profits from that? Is it the masses of poor people that make this place so special? Or is it the super rich that swindle billions wherever they go? We actively fight against mass incarceration, slave labor in jails, and forced deportation. We fight for the workers the city depends upon, people getting poverty wages, people with few benefits or rights, people that's being forced out their neighborhoods, forced to pay higher taxes, rents, and fines, all while the wealthy get tax exemptions and less regulations. Workers' Voice serves to expose the real conditions of workers' lives, to highlight and encourage struggles to fight back. Each week we will cover stories and be a voice for the working class in the ongoing fight against white supremacist, capitalist rule in and around the city of New Orleans. We know that every issue from fighting racism to resisting imperialist wars are working class issues. So represent the news from the interests of workers, not bosses, bankers, and war profiteers. We also want to give a big up to the WHIVLP New Orleans 102.3 FM for hosting us on a stellar radio station. This is a reminder to listeners to check out the website WHIVFM.org and click on the support link at the top of the page to become a member to help keep these voices on the radio show afloat and independent. Any and all donations are greatly appreciated and are tax deductible. Speaking of deductible, we're gonna have Greg go ahead and kick us off with talking about some of these right-wing protests that we need to deduce and get down with because of the fact that these white right-wing militia groups have been trying to force the economy back over and at least pushing for it, even though that's not what the masses of people are fighting for. It's rather a ploy by the capitalist class. Go ahead, expunge upon that for us, Greg.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely a right-wing racist movement. The last few times that we've done the show, we always open up with some of the recent statistics. I think last week when we were talking, we said that in the U.S. there had been something like 40,000 deaths. Now it's at a week later, it's at 53,275. The U.S. is still way ahead of any country in terms of deaths. And like we said before, this is hitting a lot of the marginalized communities hardest: Black communities, working class communities who often don't have the option to socially distance in the proper way, and they're not provided with the things they need in terms of protective equipment from their jobs and so on. We've had a number of bus drivers, for example, who've died from it in New Orleans. So while all this is happening, we've got these small groups that are pushing for the economies to completely reopen, despite the fact that workers are dying. I mean, they're basically saying the message is, we're okay with the workers dying if the stock market goes up. And these organizations have connections to the Trump campaign. That it's the same people who are out there pushing for Trump 2020. They have connections to funding from Betsy DeVos, who's a member of the Trump administration. So they represent the interest of the billionaire ruling class and the white supremacist movement. And we've seen participation from from groups like the Proud Boys, so-called, which is really, a right-wing, racist, wannabe terrorist organization that likes to go out there and get into fights with Antifa, as they put it, These are some of the kind of organizations that we squared off with in New Orleans around the Confederate monument issues. It's a lot of the same kind of people. The League of the South, that's a neo-Confederate organization that was here in New Orleans protesting to keep those monuments up. And they've been out there participating in these protests calling for the economy to reopen. And, you know, we always take into account the needs of the working class in our organization and the New Orleans Workers Group. And we understand that a lot of people are concerned about their economic situation. People are wondering whether they can pay the bills. But the answer is not to just reopen the economy up willy-nilly, which will cause more economic devastation and cause untold numbers of deaths, but we need a people's bailout. We need for rent to be canceled. That's the real answer that'll solve the problems, that the anxieties that ordinary working class people have. I mean, and just today, I just want to give them a shout out today in Jackson, Mississippi. The Party for Socialism and Liberation is having a motorcade right now calling for rents to be canceled in Mississippi. So that's an example of a real working class movement to demand a response to this. It's not these right-wing protests do not represent the working class.
And I mean, even openly, if you look at the events that are happening in Louisiana, so there was one today in Baton Rouge from 12 to 2 p.m. and then there's one tomorrow again. Openly on the events page, they say, you know, we're small business owners, but they claim to represent the working class as in they're trying to like bring workers into their ideas or whatever, and basically ask us to sacrifice our lives for their profits as small business owners. That's not in anyone's interest. They're thinking about themselves, and they're refusing to acknowledge that basically they have more, they should be investing in their workers' needs. Moreover, I just wanted to kind of point out, one of the groups organizing the protest today is a group that fights against healthcare for all. They are a believer in healthcare choices for consumers, which basically means they want privatized healthcare. So these are the folks organizing these kinds of protests. It's not in any way people who actually have anything in common with your average worker. It's people who really just want to fill their own pockets with profit.
Yeah, thank you for that. And also, man, it's a case of where the people that's being most affected is, of course, poor people, you know, industry workers, hospitality workers, retail workers, you know, people that's making $8, $9 an hour. They got some BS where they don't even want to call it hazard pay because they know it's hazardous conditions. So like at Lowe's, for example, they call it a good worker pay. You know, where they give you an extra $2, but the extra $2 is going to end in April. You know what I'm saying? So in May, you're going right back to $8 an hour, you know, as if $10 an hour was something special, you know, was something in which you were, you know, really being compensated for your labor for. You know, we know that's not the case, man. Since 1978, if the minimum wage would have kept up with inflation, we'd be at a $25 minimum wage. So we know that that's a joke. You know what I'm saying? And they keeping people in poverty wages and people dying and suffering. But it's not the CEOs of Lowe's or Walmart or, you know, the shareholders that's suffering. It's the workers at the bottom of the barrel. And with that said, you know, always look at these right-wing groups as who is funding them, you know, who is giving them their money. You know, it's the capitalist class. Who are the puppeteers that's behind these clowns, you know, because you could just look at some of these right-wing groups with their guns and shit. The guns and stuff is a matter of, you know, I mean, they tend to just be gun-ho and quick to grab it. Don't really know. They just feel threatened behind whatever, and somebody's pushing them. You know, how was it that they were able to get all of those people from the various different, you know, outlying towns and cities from around the South? You know, that wasn't by accident, man. There was actually a person in North Carolina who recorded a little bit of it, and they were one of the marches, and they were able to break down where they said this was in North Carolina. The people that were challenging the social distance, they were put together by a group called Reopen North Carolina. The march was chaperoned by Raleigh City and Capitol Police. Many of these protests drove into the Capitol. Many of these protests drove into the Capitol from across the state. A North Carolina businessman who ran for public office, Tim Enzino, chartered several buses carrying dozens of protesters from Redford, North Carolina to the protest. At one point, a Capitol cop allowed a reopened North Carolina protester to use a police megaphone. And of course, you know what I'm saying, you know, the person goes on to say they hope everybody gets sick, you know, the police and the so-called protesters in the process. But I mean, again, bro, like, just like Greg was saying, with the upkeep of the right-wing, you know, Confederate statues, you know, with the reopening of business, you know, they use racism as a tool, knowing that it's going to disproportionately affect Black and brown people, you know, as far as the debt rate. And they know that the money that's going to be made and generated is going to benefit a rich white ruling class. And, you know, that's the functionality of this here. Anybody else want to add anything?
I would just like to make one little point to the white workers who might be out there listening to this. You know, I just want to say to you, don't fall for this stuff. Don't quit being a dupe. I mean, the whole like Confederate connection says it all anyway. Like, what was the Confederacy? The Confederacy was a system. It was a slave system owned by a handful of basically aristocrats who owned these plantations. And they didn't care about the majority of poor white Southerners either. But they thought that, you know, they wanted to trick those poor white Southerners into supporting them. Say, oh, well, I'm going to keep giving you a few crumbs here and there, as long as you uphold my system. And the people who are going out there waving the Confederate flag today are following in the same footsteps of all those who were duped into supporting that system. I mean, like, when you have somebody like, and it's the same with this coronavirus thing, when you got somebody like Rush Limbaugh telling you, we need to reopen the economy. Well, Rush Limbaugh has a net worth of $500 million. You think he's like you? You think he cares about you and your white community, your poor white community where people are addicted to opioids and stuff? I mean, that's the reality of the situation for a lot of these workers out there. So just think about where this stuff is coming from and stop falling for these tricks. I mean, because the sooner we can get together and unite, the sooner we can defeat these people and fight for all of our interests.
Yeah, you're right, Greg. You got something, Meg, or you?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to this because I've been doing a little bit of investigating myself. Like, where are these calls coming from? And on the New Orleans Hospitality Workers Alliance Facebook, we had this person trying to post one of these reopen events. So I kind of asked them, asking them who they are and why are they posting this on our page. I asked them, are you an essential worker that's coming into contact with hundreds of people a day? And you know how this person responds? They respond by saying, and this is a real estate developer and a owner, a boss. He responds by saying, that wasn't the career path I chose. Basically insinuating, well, I chose to stay home while other people worked for me. These are the people that are leading these protests. These are people that are sitting just fine in their mansions, or sitting just fine at their hunting camps, and they want us to go back to work and risk our lives so they can start having checks roll in while doing nothing. And these are the same people that would turn around and tell us, well, you just want to stay home and collect a check. No, we want to protect our lives and the safety of, ourselves, our families, and our communities. And we are more than, the state. That is our money. And they should provide us with the basic necessities and needs that we have during a pandemic to protect as many people as humanly possible. So it's just, it becomes more and more clear with these right-wing protests to reopen exactly who these people are. And I tell you what, they're not workers.
Yeah, you're right. Thank you for that, Megs. And just anybody that that's making move, Megs, hopping on with us, what I'm saying, that she's steadily organizing and getting ready for this upcoming forum, which we're gonna get at in just a few. But what I'm saying, to switch over and talk about state-run oppression and getting at the fact of the matter that people have been suffering here in this country for years on end, I should say for centuries on end. They got here in New Orleans, they're doing these police checkpoints throughout the city, you know what I'm saying, mainly within Black working class neighborhoods. You know, it's just another form of oppression, you know, and it's so much BS because as they talk about social distancing, you got to do this. You got police not stopping people, giving tickets, you know what I'm saying, like talking to them in the car and whatnot, coming closer and closer. And it's in New Orleans. I'm going to share something up in Miami they had where there was a brother, he was a Black doctor, and he was going to volunteer his time to test homeless folks, you know, for the, I should say, people without a home for the COVID disease virus. So he was going out as, you know, doing the extra thing, the stuff that the city of Miami isn't doing. So he was going out to do that. Police come up to him and start messing with him, hacking him up, and, you know, asking him why he got on a mask. You know what I'm saying? Because he a Black man with a mask on, and they intimidated. And they come at him like that. The police start to messing with him. The police get in his face, cough on him. Dude gets sick. You know what I'm saying? Like a doctor who was going to volunteer his time to help, you know, people that's in the most dire situation ended up getting sick with the virus because this cop, you know, wants to just wield his power and you know, try to handle a man any kind of way. Now to transition that to New Orleans, you got where you know, it's people trying to, you know, just like survive and you know what I'm saying, like get things. You got where police are stopping them and stopping them in their car and hacking them up, you know what I'm saying, writing tickets and everything. Like as we under this so-called, you know, like state of, I should say, crisis and whatnot, man. It's just BS. Like the oppression never stops under capitalism.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's really important. So the New Orleans Hospitality Workers Alliance actually made a map of the checkpoints just to keep workers up to date, because the truth is the cops are harassing people who have any kind of like small nonviolent misdemeanor or whatever. If you don't have a license that's perfectly up to date, if you're undocumented, if really any reason whatsoever, the cops are harassing people, and we're aware of this. So we made this kind of map, but it's, you know, any kind of claim that policing is about keeping us safe, or that this has anything to do with enforcing social distancing or enforcing the stay-at-home orders, is proven to be false by the fact that these are only in Black working class neighborhoods. There are none uptown. Like there are none uptown by Tulane, 0. Lakeview, 0 so far. We've gotten 0 reports of any of these police checkpoints in those areas. And once again, it's like this is a way for our city to make money off the poorest, most oppressed folks in our community. And somehow, instead of taxing, like, I don't know, rich business owners who live in Lakeview, instead of ensuring that the poorest, most oppressed folks in our community have the resources to be able to stay at home and not go to work, instead we're harassing them, we're stopping them, we're, you know, terrorizing people basically. And yeah, so if you are a worker in New Orleans, please check out our map. It's available on the New Orleans Hospitality Workers Alliance Facebook page. And if you see any checkpoints that you've noticed that aren't on there, if you're still driving around as an essential worker, please message us. We're really trying to keep this as up to date as possible and make sure that everyone is kept safe.
You know, also to that point, you know, what I'm thinking about at this time is just the fact that, you know, because of this pandemic, so many people are not able to afford a lot of their bills right now. And we have the highest insurance rates in the country paired with some of the lowest wages in the country. So it's just ludicrous to be doing this at a time when we know that, you know, already people miss insurance payments, but people are even more likely to not be able to pay their car insurance these next few months. You know, and we know that the lowest paid workers are essential workers, a lot of fast food workers, grocery store workers. These are the people that are having to leave their homes every day to get to work. And it's just absolutely disgusting how the state is really using this to terrorize people, because it's, you know, damn near impossible to keep everything up to date in Louisiana if you're, you know, making $7.25 an hour, or if you're even making $13 an hour. It's still not enough to cover everything that you need. And it's, you know, it's very ridiculous. Like, we just have to, you know, I'm always thinking of what could we do to demand that like insurance rates are lower in Louisiana, because it's just ridiculous. Like, they genuinely are robbing people.
Hey, right. Thank you for that, comrades. You know, I mean, and again, under our form of government, it wouldn't be all this, man. You know, under like a socialist form of government, you would have where it would be no need for police. You know what I'm saying? You might, they would have, you know, where we have committees and whatnot that, you know, help regulate issues, you know, amongst community members or whatnot, but it wouldn't be this overriding police force that just get to do whatever it is that they want to do. And the law is always on their side. You know, when you deep into study, you recognize that the police are just a apparatus of the state, you know, and the state being basically a bully for the capitalist class, you know, for those that rule over us economically, you know, and that's one of the venues in which we, you know what I'm saying, aim to, you know, get rid of, because they serve no purpose but oppression. And so, with that said, we want to be able to go ahead into, well, speaking of oppression, you had where, you know, just to briefly touch on this, you had where there was a police shooting up in Metairie, Louisiana, you know, just on a suburb of New Orleans. And it was to where it was a couple of young black males. They just, you know what I'm saying, they were joyriding, you know what I'm saying? It was young brothers that just happened to be joyriding, you know what I'm saying? Of course, it's not the most ideal thing or whatnot, you know, but it's not to where it deserves for them to be shot in the head. What happened was they ended up parking the car, the alarm went off. It was their car, you know, it was their people car. They wasn't trying to steal anything. There was an off-duty cop came out of his house, you know, had a gun on him, and immediately just started shooting, you know what I'm saying? Started shooting and he shot one of them dead in the head, you know, like clean in the head, you know. And
14 years old.
Yeah, young man, 14 years old. And it's a case of where the cop didn't go to jail or anything of that nature, you know what I'm saying? Charges weren't pressed, you know, didn't press no charges on him. He's still at his house chilling, you know, bragging about what he did, how he shot somebody, just took one shot. You had with a fraternal order, the police came out and said, "Oh, you know, this is a clear and cut case. You know, somebody feared for their life, and they got shot. You know, the white cop feared for his life, and the young black boy got shot in the head. I mean, like, fraternal order police dude said straight up, y'all know what this is. You know what I'm saying? This is America. You know what I mean? Like, this is after 400 plus years of this here. It shouldn't be no surprise, man." But, you know, this young man was not trying to rob nobody, you know, but the way that they'll sell it to you is that, you know, this cop is a hero and this, you know, young brother is a villain and whatnot. Because, again, the media is run by the capitalist class. The state, the police, is controlled by the capitalist class. You know, it all plays in. You know, this is all a revolving door that we're talking about. And you know what I'm saying, we definitely wishing, you know what I'm saying, and hoping for the young man's recovery as we go through this state sanctioned violence over and over and over again, man. It's such an old tale, you know, what goes on here. So from that, we wanted to then go into talking about the upcoming action that's planned by the New Orleans Hospitality Workers Alliance. That's going to be taking place this upcoming Friday at, let me see, we got the times on here. Well, Natalie, we want a Meg, you know what I'm saying, the action, you know, being hosted by the New Orleans Hospitality Workers Alliance with the implication. It's going to be a bike in a car rally, similar to the Freedom All action that we had maybe about 2 to 3 weeks ago, going from the Juvenile Detention Center to the, you know, main jail in New Orleans. It's going to be a similar convoy taking place. The hospitality workers is going to give us more info on it.
Yeah, so, you know, May 1st is International Workers Day. And, you know, normally we participate in these actions every year, but this year it's particularly important because of the circumstances of this pandemic and what workers are experiencing, as well as the important need for, you know, us working class people to counter a lot of these narratives that the bosses are putting out and pushing, that they want a quick reopening. We are countering that, and we are saying that there should be no reopening until it's safe. and that essential workers, you know, are not receiving any of the things like essential, you know, they're not receiving protective gear on the job. Essential workers are not receiving hazard pay or paid leave. You know, even proper social distancing protocols are not being implemented in a lot of workplaces. There's just a very clear signal from the government that, you know, they are completely willing to allow a huge portion of the working class to basically, you know, risk their lives and for people to die so they can continue to accumulate profits. And we're saying that these people need to be prioritized, that workers' safety needs to be prioritized. And if that we're serious about containing the spread of COVID-19, that we would be doing these things, and that there would be mass testing going on. You know, I'm a hospitality worker that worked throughout Mardi Gras, which is where they said, you know, a large community spread happened. I still can't access a test. The majority of people still can't access testing. We know that the Black community is disproportionately affected, and there is 70% of the COVID deaths in Louisiana. And we also know that Black people and Black workers make up a huge portion of essential workers working in very important jobs like postal workers, bus drivers, grocery store workers, you know, and we really think that May Day, we're going to use this day to uplift what we're talking about and the fact that there cannot be any reopening until all of these things are addressed. You know, and that people's lives really do need to be prioritized over profit, and that we're not asking. You know, and COVID-19 and the economic recession that we're really moving into right now make it absolutely necessary for workers everywhere to unite and fight for basic dignity and survival. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Nat.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. Yeah, I'm really excited about this May Day event happening in general. I think it's really exciting that we have so much, that we've found so many ways of organizing in spite the stay-at-home actions while still respecting social distancing. And I also think it's important to just remember that May Day is, you know, has always, it's like a huge holiday all around the world. And in the spirit of internationalism, on Friday, there's going to be protests going around everywhere. You know, there's going to be these types of actions happening in multiple cities that working class folks are organizing. And at the end of the day, in spite, you know, the fact that we may live on different sides of borders or that we may feel really different from each other as workers, we're part of a tradition of fighting for these things. We're taking part in a tradition of fighting on a class basis, and, you know, standing on the backs of generations upon generations of organizers and working class folks who fought for these things.
Right. And also, you know, to point to what you said about us taking social distancing seriously, you know, while a lot of these bosses are going out in front of, you know, governors' mansions and all these different things, and they're standing directly next to each other, and, you know, they're not caring about community spread in any kind of a form, you know, we're getting creative, and, you know, we've definitely taken pointers and have been in contact with and are learning from workers across the country and around the globe. And motorcades have been a great way of, you know, still taking to the streets and still being militant, while respecting social distancing and showing genuine care, you know, for our fellow workers and community members, you know, that we can still fight even at a distance from each other. You know, so that's going to be a very important aspect of that day. I just want to, you know, re-highlight that for anybody listening that may be worried about that. People are going to be staying in their cars. People that are coming on bikes are going to be socially distanced and wearing protective gear. And all those who RSVP are going to be getting instructions around social distancing and general protocol for the day. And if people would like to RSVP, you can go to nohwa.org/Mayday2020, and that's all lowercase. You know, it's important that we find, you know, strategic and different ways to organize at this time, because despite the fact that, you know, we're staying home, we're respecting social distancing, we know that there are so many people who aren't able to right now because of the material conditions of the working class in Louisiana. And, we really want to fight for each other and uplift these issues because now, is a more of an important time than ever.
Yeah, right. Thank you for that, Megs, and that. And it just go to show you Nat, how much annually does this city produce every year? By how much money?
I think it's like $8 billion.
About $8 billion. And when we talk about $8 billion being generated, that's off of the strength of the hospitality workers, you know what I'm saying, who, are the people that's cooking the food, or the people that's doing the entertainment, or the people that's cleaning, like everything it is that's serving, everything it is that make this city the most desired place in the world, for the tourism. It's off the strength of, the hospitality workers as well as the culture bearers and, just the working class people here in this city. And, that's not unique to just New Orleans either, man. You go to New York, you go to Los Angeles, you go around the world, it's going to be the people that do the cooking, that do the sweeping, do the dishwashing, that are the most essential function of a society. The trash collectors, the sanitation workers, all these people deserve higher wages. They deserve, proper protection, if they're forced to be out here, doing the work that needs to be done. And some of the work doesn't need to be done, you know what I'm saying? People don't need to be getting their nails done, haircut and all this, you know what I mean? That ain't necessary. That's not no essential thing. If you got workers in a grocery store, and it all serving an essential need, they need to be properly protected, man. It's a humanitarian thing. It's not about, how much money you could produce. So again, we got the flyer up all on social media. If you follow New Orleans Workers Group, you follow New Orleans Hospitality Workers Alliance, you're going to be able to get more information and get the flyer and share it, far and wide with a bunch of people. For the last action we did with the Free 'em All in reference to the people that's incarcerated, and trying to help them avoid getting this COVID disease. It was a matter of we had maybe about 100 calls out there, at least, for the last action, and we didn't have any issues. Everybody followed the social distancing protocol, and it was a very good action. Like whenever we were able to shake up the city, and we forced the city and the state to come out with a statement saying, why they can't do this, why they can't do that. It's because they see us, and we know that, they're a little worried. They're like, oh man, I don't want all them people out there. We can't be shaking it up. Man, look, put Drew Brees back on TV. You know what I'm saying? Let him talk. You know what I'm saying? Like try to get people distracted again. Like that's the way they operate. What that was, they said Caesar, give them bread in a circus and they'll never revolt. So it's like, when we come out and do our actions, we might not get as much media coverage from the bourgeois press, all the time, because they don't really want that messaging going out like that. If they do, they'll then spin in a negative light, versus when you see that those right-wing militia protests that we talked about earlier, you do see that all on the press, because that's sponsored by the press. You know what I'm saying? That's sponsored by the ruling class. So they want that on TV. But the stuff that we tend to do, they might not get as much mainstream coverage, but that's why it's on us as the people. We got to use some of these social media platforms, these radio platforms, word of mouth, talking with each other, to be able to get it out and let them know that we do have power, and there's power in the people. We don't have the power of the purse, but we got the power of the people, and there's way more of us than there are them, and we just got to be able to, really hone that power and make it come to fruition. Go ahead, Megs.
Yeah, I just wanted to, cover, in case it wasn't fully clear, what the demands are for the day for folks that are listening. And I also, I wanted to shout out the ATU union, bus drivers in the city of New Orleans. They are frontline workers, and a lot of them have come down sick, and a few have died. And, I just wanted to put condolences out there for them, and just being in solidarity with them and the things that they need. And I know they've been having, talks around the need for protective gear and, having people come on through the back of the bus and limiting how many people come on there. So, I just want to shout out the ATU workers. We've contacted them and invited them out to May Day, but, to always keep them in mind too, because, bus drivers are being hugely affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, so we're fully in solidarity with them. But, our main demands for the day are no reopening until it's safe, free healthcare and testing for all, hazard pay and protective gear for essential workers, replacement income for all who have been laid off or affected by COVID-19, and a specific demand around fixing the unemployment system. We know people have been having endless problems, and we're really pushing the state to, fix some of these glitches, update the system, and hire some more people to take calls at the unemployment office, to free incarcerated and detained people, and to make some housing available for all people. We need, if people aren't getting replacement income, there needs to be a freeze on rent and mortgages. And if people aren't in homes, we have more than enough empty homes and apartments and units in this city to house every single person. So there's no excuse to have people, we have over 400 people, nearly 600 on the street right now in New Orleans. And that's ridiculous. It's a pandemic going on. But before the pandemic, they should have been housed. During the pandemic, they should be housed. And after the pandemic, they should be housed, So these are the things that we're uplifting on that day. And to, restate May Day, this protest is going to be on Friday, May 1st at 12 p.m. And we're going to be starting at 1100 Milton Street.
For those that's familiar with it, Milton, that's gonna be right there around the juvenile detention center. Right there off of the 610 by the St. Bernard exit. Now, another thing we wanted to go ahead and inform the people about is, in addition to the action that we have on May Day, there's also going to be a New Orleans Workers Group Forum that's going to take place on the same day, May 1st, and this one's going to be at 6 p.m. It's a Zoom, it's gonna be a Zoom forum. This is gonna be our second one that we've hosted. It's probably, in order for you to be able to get the link, we want you to RSVP by email. You email New Orleans Workers Group at gmail.com, indicating that you're interested in joining the forum. And the forum is going to take place on May Day, on International Workers' Day. And it's going to be about the working class struggle during the COVID-19 crisis, the exposure of the racism in the response to the crisis, the role of militarism and imperialism during the pandemic, and what workers can and should be doing to fight back and demand from the ruling class in this time. So we're asking y'all to join us at 6 p.m. on Friday, May 1st. You can RSVP by emailing neworleansworkersgroup@gmail.com. And you're going to get the Zoom link for you to join us. And we'll eventually put up we're going to put up the flyer on the Zoom link as well for people to check out. Go ahead, Greg, break it down a little bit more about what they're going to be hearing at this forum.
Yeah, we're going to have some of our comrades are going to be speaking, like Comrade Malcolm Super and Gav and Ashley who's also a member of New Orleans Hospitality Workers Alliance, Quest from Take 'Em Down NOLA, and the Workers Group is going to be hosting it. And like you said, we want to lift up the revolutionary history of May Day, which is, in the United States, mostly they've tried to push this. They try to push Labor Day as the holiday, which is just kind of like you go out and barbecue and stuff. But May Day, May 1st, it has a long history it's a rallying cry for the working class globally. In a lot of places, like if you were to go to Cuba on May Day, you would see thousands of people on the streets celebrating the victories of the working class. And so that's kind of that's why we're doing it on that day and trying to frame this current situation in that light, that we're carrying forward that revolutionary spirit of May Day and the militant working class movement, and sort of looking at, as we've been talking about in this program, we're faced with a lot of specific challenges at this time. It's turning out to be a global recession at the same time as a pandemic. I mean, this is pretty much unprecedented. We haven't had any pandemic like this in our lifetime, but we're seeing fight back all over the place. Like, since March, there's been over 100 strikes and walkouts and stuff across the United States, from chicken processing factories to, you name it, Amazon workers. And, we're not at the point where, ultimately we want to have a general strike where all workers in all sectors go on strike at one time and say, we're not going to restart the economy until the capitalists give us what we want. We're not at that point yet, but it does kind of look like there is another term called a rolling general strike, which describes a situation that happened, for example, historically in Detroit in 1937. And actually, and all over the U.S., there were 4,700 strikes across the U.S. in 1937. They didn't necessarily happen at the same time. It was one after another. So we're kind of in a situation more like that, where we're having kind of somewhat disconnected strikes that are happening, but and it's not on the same level, not on the same scale as 1937, but is showing this incredible strength that the working class actually has. Going out there, and it's kind of, we always talk about in the workers group, awakening the sleeping giant. This is one of those moments where it seems like the giant is starting to stir a little bit. And again, it's not at the level that we need it to be to have a real victory, but there's certainly something happening, and we have to figure out how to orient ourselves in this moment. And that's kind of the frame that we're going to be talking about. And, Brother Malcolm always brings in a lot of that historical understanding, an incredible elder in the struggle. And I just think it's going to be really interesting for folks out there when they tune in to listen.
Yeah, you're right. Thank you for that, Greg.
Yeah.
And also realize that, when we talk about May Day, every concession that a worker has is off the strength of workers, fighting for it. So when we talk about the 8-hour work day, the 40-hour work week, which, at this point is still real excessive, in relation to people's lives and their salaries and money that they make. We talk about weekends off, talk about paid sick leave, which again, everybody does not have, what I'm saying? Even though we are, advocating for these things and we bragging on them, or at least speaking highly of them, we recognize that everybody don't have it, also, being able to fight against child labor, these are all actions that came about, with the origins of workers fighting back, for their rights, and May Day is something that commemorates that and honors that and lifts up the workers. Now something that they strategically did here in this country, I think this was maybe in 18 so this was in 1884, where you had the this is up in Chicago, they call it the Haymarket Square. The bourgeois says riots, but we say the Haymarket Square protests and fight back, in which they were fighting for the 8-hour workday and just getting some livable wages. And it was a big uproar. Eventually, they had some cops that were killed, and so it was deemed in a negative light. Even though the cops, there's speculation that they killed themselves, as they tried to kill some of the protesters. But the media spun it as the protesters are wild and crazy, and the unions are wild and crazy, because again, who controls the media? The ruling class. And so that's what the dominant narrative began. But workers understood what the truth was, and on a worldwide level, a worldwide scale, they recognized that we as workers have to unite and have to fight for our rights, have to fight for higher wages, have to fight for better living conditions, working conditions. And now what they did here in this country, I forget which president that was that did this, but they were able to get people away from the May 1st sort of fervent fight back and ferociousness of a radical tradition of unionism, and they formulated what they call Labor Day, in which is basically just a chill day, where it's a day in September in which the capitalist class allows people not to go to work, or at least some people not to go to work, because you still got a vast majority that still do work on that day. And It's just a matter of, that's a way in which they change the narrative, you know what I'm saying? Get you to look at something else. It's just like how they got black people celebrating July 4th. When July 4th, 1776, black people weren't even human beings, you know, but they still got black people walking around here celebrating July 4th as if they are part of that, you know. So they got people celebrating Labor Day without understanding what the capitalist class did to get you away from May Day. You know, they want you on Labor Day on some chill, relaxed stuff, rather than May Day is a violent, you know, overturn and taking away what taking from the capitalists what they've taken from us. So with that said, you know what I'm saying? Again,
Big E.
Huh? Yeah. Just go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I just saw actually that in the 1950s, the U.S. government tried to they created a holiday from May 1st called Loyalty Day, where you pledge your allegiance to the United States. I don't think that really caught on, but they still try to observe it. That's how desperate they are to stop that radical history.
And again, you see the purpose of that, they wanted May Day to be Loyalty Day, because they want you to pledge loyalty to this United States, which is a falsity of a government, a falsity of a nation. You know, we recognize that we are workers of the world, and workers of the world have to unite. And May Day was something that recognized the labor around the world is united versus, you know, oh, I only work for Walmart in Gretna. You know, it's like, no, you are part of an international labor force, and we are all being taken advantage of. And once we realize that and we rise up and stop it, then it's the whole flip will be script, and the whole script will be flipped around. So with that said, be sure to join us on the forum on May 1st at 6:00 p.m. You know, email NewOrleansWorkersGroup@gmail.com for more information. Also, we wanted to shout out about to get to the end of the show. I want to shout out the doctors in Cuba. You know, in Cuba in general, they've sent out 59. Oh, I should say they've sent out doctors into at least 59 different countries. And this is in addition to the fact that this year marks the 59th anniversary of the Bay of Pigs invasion, in which the U.S. was unsuccessful in their coup attempt to overthrow a government, you know what I'm saying, a people that was seeking self-determination, as they were seeking in self-determination, just like they've done in so many other countries. They tried to then, take the country back over and put in their puppets. The same thing that they're trying to do in Venezuela, same thing that they've done in Bolivia, things that they've tried to do in Vietnam. All about this imperialism. And so we want to shout out the Cuban doctors who are out there in the world doing the work for the least of these, the people who can't afford doctors. We also wanted to shout out Trader Joe workers, and as well as you have Starbucks workers and Amazon workers and Whole Foods workers who aren't previously organizing, but now due to this pandemic, this COVID crisis that's going on, they are now in the formations of, unionizing and recognizing their power together. So we want to shout that out and, keep uplifting and encouraging those sorts of actions and whatnot. You got anything from Greg?
That's pretty much all I had.
All right, no problem.
I would like to second that we want to that we really want to recognize Cuba, and at a time when a lot more people have been talking about socialism in this country in the past couple of years, and they do everything that they can, the bourgeoisie and the bourgeois press, they do everything that they can to demonize it. They attacked Bernie Sanders for saying a couple good things about Cuba. But despite all the slanders, Cuba keeps demonstrating to the world that they're real leaders in terms of the humanitarian response to this and all kinds of other crises. even though the U.S. government tries to choke them off and keeping them from being able to do anything. But they're the ones, it's a tiny island with a small economy, but they're out there outperforming the United States government in terms of providing aid to the rest of the world. And so, as Fidel said, history will absolve me.
Yeah, you're right. And to that notion, I'm saying, for the people in New Orleans that, may doubt some of this, man, there's a case of where after Hurricane Katrina in 2005, Cuba was ready to send over doctors, supplies, medical staff, anything that the people of New Orleans needed, because they recognized that it was mainly Black people that were suffering. And they know that this white supremacist capitalist government was not going to do anything for the least of these, and which was proven to be true. So, I'm saying, shout out to Cuba, even, and with that, America denied Cuba the ability to come into the country and be able to help the people that needed help. I'm saying? Like, that just goes to show you how vile and evil this sort of doctrine of capitalism is, and of imperialism and the subjugation of groups of people. You know what I mean? Like, this thing goes deep. And so we just got to keep reading, keep educating others and spreading the word, spreading the knowledge, and, and also, what I'm saying, just not being afraid, not being afraid to take risks, not being afraid to put your, just yourself out there, and, live for something that's worth living for. You know what I mean? It's like, we only got, it's a finite life. It's like, what you gonna do from womb to tomb? What you gonna do, to where you're gonna be remembered by, and that you're doing something that's worth doing. So, we just wanna shout out all the workers out there, shout out everybody that's, fighting and organizing, and even those that are suffering during this pandemic. You know what I'm saying? We got love and solidarity with you. And we want to let you know that we got your back, and we will keep this struggle going, keep this fight alive. I want to shout out nothing but a G. Thank Greg for being on the show today. I want to shout out.
My pleasure.
Shout out Making Moves Megs. Shout out Naughty by Nature Nat. And all other comrades that's out there, and all the people worldwide, globally, people in the city. And it's just a reminder that the working class people in New Orleans that make this place so desirable. We're the soul and the essence of the city. We're the food, the dance, the music, the rhythm, the talk, the flavor. We're all that and some jazz, you dig? Till next time, love and solidarity, my peoples. And we out.